Welcome back to the 5-5 Sports Podcast. I'm Aviva Mirsky, here with Evan Rutenberg and Matthew Choi. We are here to continue with what we have been discussing in the previous weeks. This includes the NFL, NBA, and the World Juniors. But let's start with the NFL and the Cowboys versus the Eagles. The Eagles were eliminated, while the Cowboys are still managing to have life this season. How did you feel about this game?
I mean, Matthew, I have to be honest. I didn't think we'd be talking about the Cowboys the rest of the year just because I didn't think they'd be relevant enough. Here we are, NFC East. 3 teams are fighting for one spot. There's a lot of issues in the NFC East. I mean, each team has their own issues. So it's kind of hard to talk about any of these teams because we all know they're not contenders. But here we are, Cowboys, Eagles. It was a game where the Eagles didn't play any defense. We saw a little bit. If you're looking for kind of bright spots from the Eagles, I'd have to say Jalen Hurts. I thought he had a good game once again. So if you're looking at positives as a Philadelphia fan, if there are any, it's Jalen Hurts. In his 3 games, has looked very good. Of course, it's a small sample size, but if you have to look simply for positives within the Eagles, it's Jalen Hurts. I mean, the defense sucks. If you're letting the Cowboys put up 37 points on you, you're obviously not a very good defense. But they are playing well. I think Andy Dalton deserves a lot more credit. I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves in this league. We have to forget, he was a playoff team with Marvin Lewis as a head coach, and we all know Marvin Lewis can't coach. So I think we deserve to give Andy Dalton more credit for his, I think, overall career. He isn't, as good as he used to be. Injuries and such, it happens. Andy Dalton's not a superstar quarterback, but I think he's almost an underrated signing as a backup QB because without him, this team is probably a 2-win team. They probably don't win since Dak Prescott goes down. Their defense is horrible, Dallas. They still have a lot of issues, but the promising signs are there on offense. You bring Dak Prescott back, you have great receivers. Running backs, we have to see what happens with Zeke. I think he's going on a fast decline. I don't think he's ever going back to the way he used to be. But you can find a running back anywhere.
Running backs don't last long in the league.
Exactly, anyways. But running backs, you can find a hot running back. On a practice squad through free agency. Running backs come and go. It's not a pressing issue. They overpaid for him, but with Jerry Jones and his level of affiliation for some of his loyal guys, that's what he does. But you have to look at everything with the Cowboys. There's a lot of issues with the team. The positives are going to be the offense next year. Going to get Dak Prescott back. CeeDee Lamb is clearly going to be a star in this league. Amari Cooper is a great receiver. Gallup, he drops a little too much, but he has games where he does produce. And the O-line, with a few tweaks, they will be healthy. It will be healthier next year. They're older, but you could tweak it here and there. The Cowboys, you hope, are still an attractive destination as a Dallas fan. You still hope they can still attract top players, and there are signs that they can get back to the top. It depends on how they manage this team. But with Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy, it's not that is not a duo that's winning you a Super Bowl anytime soon. Mike McCarthy, I still don't trust his coaching ability. Getting 3 wins against 3 bad teams doesn't change anything. But outside of that, I can't believe we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys in Week 17, talking about a possible playoff team. But they're playing well. 3 games in a row. They have a great D-line, but their secondary is so horrible. That's what's going to cost them in any playoff game.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember our second week of Spirit Live, you're like, this is the last time we're talking about the Cowboys this season. Like, after this, we're done. There's nothing more to say about the Cowboys.
Well, they're also on a playoff team, and all of a sudden,
the narrative of the Cowboys changed this season. Like,
exactly.
They're not the hopeless team that they were in the beginning of the season. They're not that much hope.
They're not a good team because their entire secondary is horrible. They do have a lot of pieces on D-line, and a big reason is DeMarcus Lawrence is playing the best football we've seen out of him in the last 3 years. DeMarcus Lawrence all of a sudden has come out of whatever shell he was hiding in. DeMarcus Lawrence is playing like the D-lineman we paid $90 million to. So credit to DeMarcus Lawrence for kind of coming out of the shadow. But a lot of guys are producing on that D-line. Alden Smith is getting pressure in the backfield. You've seen guys like Antoine Woods be a presence. They've been making plays on defense. That's why they are winning, because they aren't as bad as they were earlier in the year. But that's not saying much, because they were the worst defensive team in this league.
And I'll say this: you touched upon it yourself, but I think the biggest problem with the Cowboys going forward now is the fact that Mike McCarthy is a coach, and
Jerry Jones is going to sit there and he's going to
You're not gonna find anyone better because Jerry Jones is the owner.
Exactly. He's going to look at the situation and say, we got 6 wins. You know, you can make all the excuses. We were hurt. You know, Zeke wasn't producing. Dak was out, this and that. What? There's still – the coaching was still horrible this year. You can't get around that. And you can make whatever excuse you want, but –
it's not like you're winning games with Dak.
Exactly. Anyone that understands the NFL knows that Mike McCarthy is not the reason this team is potentially a playoff team. We have to – like, Mike McCarthy can coach, and I can't wait to get rid of him because we're not winning anything with him. But
yeah, you're a playoff team again. You guys are in the NFC East, so that's not saying that much.
We're talking about teams fighting for a playoff spot that don't deserve to be in the playoffs. So, but we have to talk about them because they've played their ways into that position. And all of a sudden, we'll get into the NFC East later. We'll make our predictions in a bit. But
look,
exactly. Strictly talking about Dallas, they beat a bad team in the Philadelphia Eagles, who are really playing for nothing, and that's really the bottom line.
I'll give them credit. We thought their season was done, but they're still they still have a season going for them. So I'll give them that much credit.
Yeah, they haven't laid down, to their credit, but in any other division, in most other scenarios, this team isn't
going
where they should be come the final week of the NFL season.
Exactly.
Well, it's exciting for them. On that note, we're going to move on to the Browns losing an important game to the New York Jets. What did you guys take away from this?
I said this before, and I say it again. I think the Browns are an extremely overrated team.
Yes.
I think they don't deserve the record that they're having. I think they, like I said before, I think they only won like 2 games this season that weren't like easy wins. And I think just the fact that they lost to Jets in a game that really mattered to them, because look, the AFC is tight this season. The wild cards come down to the Ravens, Dolphins, Browns, and Colts. This was the game the Browns needed to win. It was supposed to be a guaranteed win, and they blew it just like the Cleveland Browns would. And this is just my prediction for it. I don't see Browns really going far in the playoffs at all. I think if they do meet the playoffs,
they may not make the playoffs. Exactly.
Yeah.
The Browns are a very good team. If they end up playing the Bills, or if they end up playing, let's say, the Steelers, I mean, those are the 2 most overrated teams in the league, the Browns and Steelers. But I think both of those teams have benefited from a fairly easy schedule. And if Baltimore did win the division and they didn't have those 3 games against division leaders, even then, you have to look at Baltimore's schedule and say it wasn't very hard either, because New England was division winner. New England's not good this year. Who else won the division last year in the AFC? I'm just trying to refresh my memory.
Chiefs.
It was the Chiefs, and it was Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
So they had maybe 2 more games that were tougher than the other 2 teams, but I think the entire division is completely overrated. There's a lot of issues on all those 3 teams, but I'd say the Browns and Steelers more so because they've kind of been in the limelight for the first time. The Ravens they've been kind of in the limelight the last 2 years because they have great defenses with those teams, and you guys had Lamar Jackson, and he was incredible last year.
Ravens got a bit of a reality check this season.
Exactly. He revolutionized the way some people played quarterback, and now we've seen Kyler Murray and I'd say mainly Kyler Murray come in and do a similar job. But Lamar Jackson's a terrific athlete, but I think the entire division is overrated in a way because their record, they're not as good as their records say they are, if that makes any sense. I think all of them have benefited from a slightly easier schedule. They're all good teams in their own respect, but they all have weaknesses that we haven't addressed this year. But strictly going back to Cleveland, Baker Mayfield is horrible. It's just he's not a very good QB. You look at his footwork, you look at his mechanics. He can make some good throws, but an elite QB has to be way more consistent than Baker Mayfield is. And despite losing 4 receivers, I know that's tough, but you still have to beat the Jets. They're still the Jets. They have 1 win all year. They're not a good football team, and they're poorly coached. There's no excuse for only putting up 16 points against them. It's even without your receivers. You still have Nick Chubb. You still have Kareem Hunt. You still have your tight ends. You have to find a way to win that game. A good team finds a way to beat the New York Jets despite losing 4 receivers. And I know it's not an ideal situation, but that is your playoff berth on the line. That is they haven't made the playoffs in how many years? If you're Baker Mayfield, that is the game you prove that even without 4 receivers, you'll still beat the Jets no matter how you do it. And the way they lose on a fumble, 4th and inches. He tries advancing the ball, and he drops it, and that's what cost them the game. So it's time to seriously evaluate Baker Mayfield, and I think most of the league or most fans know that he isn't good enough to lead you to a championship.
Yeah, I think that's obviously a year ago. Like, he had a good rookie season, and it was pretty clear last season that he wasn't going to be what
they
thought he
they
was.
had a good year, but that team has talent all over the pitch. I think their one weakness outside of Baker Mayfield is their secondary. I think their secondary is a bit sloppy at times. I think they are shown to kind of in the passing game they do struggle covering elite receivers one-on-one. They're zonally they often get beat. So Cleveland, yeah, their record is a lie because they have had a fairly easy schedule, so kind of benefited from not having to be at their best. But Cleveland, if they make the playoffs, are definitely going to get a reality check from whoever they play.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
Moving on to another crucial game for a team in the playoff hunt, we have the Colts, who lost an important game to the Steelers. What were your thoughts on this one?
Well, the Colts blew it, and personally, I don't mind at all because it helps the Ravens secure that playoff position. But look, I'm not going to bash on the Colts too much because they have been a good team for most of the season. Their defense has really been one of the most impressive things this season. I think the biggest issue is probably that Philip Rivers just isn't that same QB that you would want him to be, as the other playoff teams would have. Also the Philip Rivers is a lot older than he was before, so he's not. You can't really rely on him for an entire playoff run. And they faced a good defense. Like, we call it Steelers overrated, but at the end of the day, they do have one of the best defenses in the league, and that's just a fact. And like, let's be honest, the problem with the Steelers isn't really in their defense. But I would say I wouldn't count Colts out yet because I do think they are a better team than the Browns. I think they're a team that can contend with the Ravens and Dolphins, which is the way they've been playing. Again, Philip Rivers is probably the biggest question mark, but they have good offensive pieces. They have John Taylor, who seems to be getting better each week. And T.Y. Hilton, he's clearly not the same T.Y. Hilton as when Andrew Luck was joined to him. But he is, if Philip Rivers, if he is having a good game, he's a receiver that he can still rely on, I think. But the Colts have enough pieces to, I think, make a run. I think they got unlucky facing the Steelers in the last few weeks, while the Browns were lucky enough to face the Jets. The Ravens were lucky enough to face the Giants. So I think Colts kind of got like the short straw there. But I think they still have a chance.
I'd be shocked if the Colts aren't a playoff team because I don't know who they play next week. I'll just double check on that. But whoever they play, honestly, yeah, they play the Jaguars next week. So congratulations, Indianapolis Colts, for making the playoffs. I'll state the obvious with the Colts. I just think they're a well-coached team. When you have a well-coached team, you have guys that kind of overperform. I think the defense hasn't overperformed. I think they've just been brilliant all year. And despite them, getting beat on a few, deep balls, Juju caught one in the end zone. They got beat. I don't know who got the third quarter kickstarted. It was someone kickstarted their comeback. Pittsburgh. It was one deep ball. I'm just forgetting who. It was Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson got the comeback kickstart. They got beat on a few deep balls. Pittsburgh also got helped out a little bit by the refs. They got, a few 50-50 pass interferences. Sometimes that's the way football goes. Football is really a game of inches. So you can't this really won't define Indianapolis this season because they still have a terrific team. And even though I think most people don't consider them Super Bowl contenders, we all know they're going to be tough out because their defense plays hard. They're tough to beat. And Philip Rivers, I think, is having a really good year. I think he started out slowly, but as the season's gone along, I think he has fared really well.
But we wouldn't bet on Rivers being the
but you have to credit a lot of things that have helped Philip Rivers. O-line's given him a lot of time, so he hasn't been hit constantly. He's probably not feeling as injured as he maybe has in previous seasons late into the year because of how well he has been protected by that O-line. T.Y. Hilton, I think this is the best he's looked since Andrew Luck. I think he looks quicker. He's making sharp cuts. You saw he put a few guys on the ground from the Steelers side of things. He broke a few ankles, T.Y. Hilton. He looks like a version that we saw under Andrew Luck. So credit to T.Y. Hilton for kind of rejuvenating his career and kind of bringing life to the Colts season. they'll be a playoff team, and no matter who they play, they'll be a tough out. And I think they can win any game that they play.
For me, my biggest worry about them is that the offense hasn't been consistent enough. I'd say
that's fine, but come playoff time, you'll have your defense. They'll limit any team to most likely under 30 points. I'd be shocked if maybe, except for the Chiefs, if anyone could score more than 30 points on that Colts defense. They're well coached. They understand how to play football, and their O-line helps them run the ball, and they'll be able to run clock. There's very few teams I think that could beat the Colts, and it's a regular season game. Credit to the Steelers for making a comeback, but that's really not how the Steelers have played all year. They've been a team playing from ahead. So whether or not the Steelers are contenders, that's a discussion for maybe another week or two. But simply on the Colts, losing that game, I don't think will affect them too much. They'll beat the Jaguars. They'll rebound. They're lucky that they have the Jaguars to kind of end off their season because we know the Jaguars aren't very good. But Indianapolis has all the pieces to at least win 2 games and be an AFC championship team. They're right there with Buffalo, Tennessee, and Kansas City as teams that can potentially win the AFC. I think those are my 4 teams that have the threat and have the ability to win the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guarantee. Like, they're not a team that's going to just, like, go down easily. They're a team that's going to fight. They're going to show up every week fighting. And, look, my thought process on them is that they're just not – they don't have the firepower to contend against the top team in the AFC. But at the same time, I'm not counting them out completely because I do give credit where it's due to that team.
Okay. So now moving on to basketball. With 2 games of the Raptors played and both of them being losses, what concerned you guys the most?
Nothing. I think we're all just overreacting to the Raptors. We know what they are, and we know what they aren't. They're not contenders this year, and I think a lot of people kind of expected more from the Raptors. They'll lose games against, maybe teams that you'd expect them to beat, but it's so early on. You have to remember, in the NBA, like everyone beats everybody. Like there's never kind of a shoe-in game in the NBA. They don't have any superstars, the Raptors, so what we know is they'll play tough, they'll play hard, and we know what their culture is. We know what the Raptors are kind of all about over the last 5 years. Once they start figuring it out on defense, it's 2 games into the year. Whatever early assumptions you can make, you just throw it out the window and give it 15 games. That's where I'm going to start judging the Raptors. 2 games in, I'm not affected by what's going on. They've struggled a little on offense, but then again, you have to get adjusted to some new pieces. Losing Serge Ibaka obviously is going to hurt them because now you have to seriously downgrade an Aaron Baines. But you'll have guys fit in. You'll have guys play their roles. And once they kind of get some more chemistry, once everyone starts shooting, they'll start hitting a lot more threes. Then all of a sudden you start winning a few games, and they'll be around the 5-6 seed this year. And I think our expectations were high because of how well we've played in the regular season over the last few years. We said it last week. The East got better. The East is stronger. We're not finishing ahead of Philadelphia. We're not finishing ahead of Milwaukee. No chance we're finishing ahead of Boston. And Brooklyn. We'll talk about Brooklyn a little later in the show, but that team is going to fly this year. So unless one of their stars gets injured, we're talking about a team that is the 5th or 6th, maybe even 7th best team in the East, and that's okay. You have to look at the roster and say that's where they are talent-wise. The East is a strong conference this year.
Yeah, I think you said it all. I'm not overly concerned right now, but I think if there was to be, it'll just simply be what you said, that we just don't have any superstars on this team. As we look at this team, and it's not a team that's going to contend with the most stacked rosters you see in the NBA. We're not going to be a better team than Milwaukee. Like you said, we're not going to be a better team than Brooklyn. Like, Siakam's a great player, don't get me wrong, but he is not a superstar player. He can be. He just isn't there yet. And Lowry's a year older. Van Vliet's kind of like Siakam. He can be greater, but he just isn't that same level player. You wouldn't put Van Vliet in the same tier as players like Kyrie Irving or point guards like Kyrie Irving or Steph Curry in Golden State or Damian Lillard. He's not on that tier point guards. And I think when you watch the game, when you see him lose to Pelicans, when you see him lose to San Antonio, Raptors didn't really look bad.
They're not losing to bad. They're losing teams that they're not getting blown out. There's close games, and
Pelicans was a bit of distance, but
yeah, it's tough when you have that championship and then you come close or not close, but you had a possibility to maybe do some things last year. You reached a game 7. You play a
Yeah,
great
but
team
we
in
don't have
Boston.
Kawhi, we don't have Ibaka.
Exactly. What I'm trying to say is our expectations have been high, and we've been blessed with great basketball from Nick Nurse, and we've been blessed with a lot of great moments over the last 2 years. And it's kind of frustrating when that comes to an end, and you kind of want more success because it didn't last forever. It wasn't a very long period, but I think all Toronto fans are grateful for the championship. But this year, all you can ask for is for them to play their heart out every time they step on the floor. And if they do that, no Raptor fan's going to complain, even if you miss the playoffs.
Raptors.
Exactly.
We're
You
going
just
up.
have to play well. You have to play, with some urgency, some hustle. And as long as you keep doing that, and as long as you kind of keep the same level of intensity that they've displayed over the last 10 years or over the last 5 years, wherever you kind of want to put, the benchmark for the Raptors, that's really all you can ask for from this team, because that's what they'll give you.
Look, the Raptors they're going to continue to play good basketball, I'd say, but that's simply just not going to be enough because the East has got stronger. Teams are getting better because it's not so like 5 years ago, there were only really 2 good teams in the NBA. It was like Golden State and Cleveland, and now
The NBA has become a lot more balanced over the last 3 years, and we're kind of seeing the balance, the power balance in the NBA really shift to a lot more teams than just one, because we're seeing a lot more kind of superstar athletes. I think it's become a lot more athletic over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's been kind of moving towards that. But as you have a lot more shooters, you have a lot more kind of athletic guys, and you have a lot of guys that can put points on the board. It's harder to predict NBA games now because it could go either way. You don't know how someone's going to shoot one night compared to the other night. And there's a lot of guys that can make shots in this league. There's a lot of guys that can do a lot of things that we haven't seen before. And the way that basketball's kind of evolving and the way it's shifting into this kind of 3-point shooting game, we're seeing a lot more guys kind of emerge as really valuable players in this league. And we really haven't had that level of what's it called? That balance throughout the 30 teams of the league. And for the first time, there really isn't a horrible team in the NBA. There's just because everyone has good players. So no matter what, anyone could really be anyone on any given night.
Well, I'd say everyone has good players, but I'd still consider the Knicks a horrible team.
Yeah, but the Knicks now have some players. I mean,
No,
the
they
Knicks,
do.
the Knicks
they
all of a
have
sudden,
talent.
the Knicks, you can't look at the Knicks schedule and say they're going to lose every game. And there's
Well, no NBA team loses every game.
Well, I'm saying there's been teams where you could say 90% of the time they're going to lose, and they would. You don't know if the Knicks are going to lose any particular game this year because the Knicks have talent, and I think they started out the year okay. The Knicks.
They beat the Bucks, but the Bucks were just surprising.
Exactly. I'm saying there's that kind of that power balance that's just shifted in the NBA where there's no team that's kind of unbeatable anymore, and it's almost refreshing to see.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so on that note, moving away. Well, you guys kind of talked about this already, but moving away from the Raptors, what stuck out from the rest of the league?
I think what stuck out to me was Nikola Jokic, the way he's been playing. He's averaging a triple-double this season so far. I'll ask Kevin, would you say Jokic is an MVP favorite this season?
The Nuggets, it depends where they finish because the Nuggets have finished like 2-3. We know what Jokic is. It's hard for me to see Jokic winning an MVP. He would have to put up just incredible numbers because we know what some of these guys in the league can do.
Yeah.
And I think the competition for MVP is so tough, and it feels like Jokic almost doesn't fit the mold. We know how valuable Jokic is to the Nuggets.
The formula that the NBA chooses for MVP.
Exactly. It feels hard for him to be an MVP candidate or an MVP favorite simply because of just who he is. But it's not taking anything away from the player because Nikola Jokic is a very good player.
Yeah.
But as an MVP favorite, I can't say he is.
That being said, I think we can't take away from how well he has been playing this season. I think 18 assists last night, that's
incredible.
From a center as well. Like, that's 18 assists is like incredible for a point guard. And like for the way he plays and he's still scoring, still getting the rebounds. He is one of the most dangerous players in the league, and I'll argue the most dangerous center in the league right now.
I mean, outside of Anthony Davis, I think, yeah.
I mean, Anthony Davis, I consider a power forward / like center. Like,
Yeah, but yeah, Nikola Jokic deserves all the credit because he's so much fun to watch. Nikola Jokic, and the Nuggets have been doing this for a while now. So it feels like if the Nuggets are going to kind of break through, it feels like this is their time in the next 2-3 years. It feels like this is now their window. So the Nuggets have an opportunity. I think again, Mike Malone has them coached very well. They play the right way, and kind of having Jokic, it's always a different element to his game. So you never know where you're getting per game of Nikola Jokic. Is he going to have a great shooting game? Is he going to have a great passing game? Is he going to get a bunch of rebounds? I mean, he usually does all three, but what can stand out from Jokic's game? When you go game to game, you just don't know because he does it all, Nikola Jokic. The one thing I have to say, the Brooklyn Nets. I think the way they who they play opening night, the Nets, was it the Warrior? It was the Warriors. I think the way they played, I think we'll keep watching them. I mean, look, a lot. Yeah, I could pick a lot from what stood out from the NBA because there's been a lot of good things from the first 2 weeks. There's been a lot of positives from a lot of different teams. We see, teams like the Orlando Magic starting at 3-0. The Pacers, are they 2-0 or 3-0? I know they haven't lost yet. I'm just not sure how many games they've played. I think they're 3-0, and with Sabonis playing great basketball, showing that his All-Star wasn't a fluke. But I think the way that they've started out, the Brooklyn Nets, and I don't know if they're going to get figured out, but their ball movement combined with having superstars and talent all over the floor, I think we didn't expect them to be this good, and Brooklyn are just solidifying the fact that they are NBA favorites. So that's kind of what stood out to me, that they're proving their worth. Kyrie Irving's playing great basketball. KD is looking like he did in Golden State. So Brooklyn is definitely a team to watch.
Before his injury, KD, when you think about this whole decade, we think that the greatest NBA player to play game was LeBron. And always second, you would say KD. And I honestly think you're wrong to say it's anyone else because Kevin Durant has just been that consistent, that good all season. Kyrie Irving, I'd say he's always been more of like a Robin than a Batman. Like he's always been a really great sidekick.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
Look,
guy, and that's okay. No, you know what? Sometimes it's good to be a great teammate because not everyone is going to be. I mean, he's a superstar, but not everyone's going to be kind of that player who carries you to championship. And especially as a point guard, you usually don't see point guards carrying teams to championships. It's usually small forwards. It's usually power forwards. It's because kind of size and defense matters.
Every big guy needs a guard. That's what
exactly.
I would say.
Like you look at Steph Curry. Steph Curry changed the way kind of we look at shooting, but what made that team special is Kevin Durant and the size that they had. You can have all the shooting you want. You look at, Damian Lillard, you look at Steph Curry, you look at all these great point guards. They can score whenever they want, but you don't win championships with a great point guard. You need size and you need defense. And that's why we always talk about Kawhi Leonard's and those guys that have great defense, that have great two-way games. We talk about those guys being MVPs because those are the players that when you could take away your number one option on offense and you could be the number one guy to score the ball, that's what really separates great players from good players. So it's just simply the way the NBA is. But don't take anything away from what Kyrie Irving can do because the way
he's allowing Durant to play as well as he is right now.
Exactly, like his dribbling, his ability inside, his speed. He's hard to stop when he's playing at his best, and we're seeing his best so far early on this year.
Also, I'll mention Caris LeVert. He's been having a really good.
Yeah, Caris LeVert, probably sixth man of the year, early favorite for sixth man of the year. There's a lot. As I said, there's a lot of talent on a lot of teams, and Brooklyn got a lot of talent on that roster. So we could talk about who they have all day. I think we talked about it last week, how deep they are, and I think they're proving why they are contenders. And that's why they stood out to me, just simply because they're playing, like their style play is something that I don't know if we expected, but credit to Steve Nash for kind of incorporating all that talent because we're seeing a lot from the Nets early on this year.
So now I'm talking about Steve Nash. Like the way he's coaching his team is really reminiscent of how he kind of operated the floor when he was a point guard back in Phoenix. So credit to that because he's doing a really great job with that team so far.
Yeah, a lot to learn with this team. We'll see as the season progresses, but it's early signs for Brooklyn to be a championship team. The signs are there for sure. So credit to the Brooklyn Nets.
Finally, moving on to the World Juniors, several days in. What are your thoughts so far?
I think all the favorite teams, all the teams you'd expect to win, have won, except for maybe Russia on Sunday. But I think for most part, like every game kind of turned out win or loss turned out the way you expect. The only thing that I didn't expect is for especially that first night, for teams to win by how much they did. Like, I believe Canada completely ran over Germany.
Yeah.
The U.S. won 11-0.
And the
Sweden
U.S.
won
had an
7-1.
11-0 win. Yep.
Yeah,
Sweden, how many did Sweden score that game?
7 goals,
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, yeah,
7-1.
that's typical Sweden. Yeah, I don't think anything's really surprising from the World Juniors. Just on that rush result, we usually one of the big teams loses.
It's going to happen.
A close game to a team that isn't like the worst team in that conference, or not conference, in that kind of group.
Division.
Exactly.
Group,
so yeah, there's so many sports terms. It's hard. Sometimes we always mix we mix a few of them together, but. I mean, like Russia beat the U.S. The U.S. blew out Austria. So, I mean, I don't know if we really learned anything because we know kind of who the top dogs. We know kind of who's going to be fighting, and it's really just a game-to-game thing. The World Juniors, the reason it's great because it's impossible to call. And once you get into the quarterfinals, and you have twos, and you have the twos playing the threes, those games are hard to call because there is not much to separate those teams, and you usually play close games. Hockey's always a game of fine margins, and you don't see many blowouts from good teams. When two good teams play each other, you usually get a good game of hockey. It's kind of the beauty of the sport. So, yeah, it's hard to call. There's been a lot of kind of standout players, but, I mean, what matters is the quarterfinals and once you get into the knockout stages because that's when the hockey really matters most. But it's been a fun tournament so far. I think it's definitely delivered the hype because – we've had a lot of goals. We've had a lot of good games, and that's what you expect from a World Junior tournament, and I think that's what we've seen so far.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
Now we move on to our new segment where we answer 10 questions in a not-so-rapid-fire manner. So they each have 30 seconds to answer the question. So let's start. With Dwayne Haskins' cut, is he done in the NFL?
I mean, it feels like it. Look, he hasn't lived up to the expectations, and when you look at young QBs, if they're disappointed to get benched, that's fine, but just the way he was sitting so far away from Case Keenum, it's not like look, he's not a Hall of Fame QB, but you have to show a little bit of respect, and if you want to, the NFL is all about learning, it's all about growing, and it feels like Dwayne Haskins' attitude was wrong the whole time. Didn't feel like a team player, and at the end of the day, you have to look at Dwayne Haskins and say he hasn't lived up to expectations, and we'll see if he gets another chance because it feels like he really blew it in Washington.
Look, I think he'll be able to, at some point in his career, some teams will need like a backup quarterback or a third-string quarterback, and I think, yeah, maybe he could fill that role. But in terms of actually likely to play throughout the season, I don't think he has a chance. We've seen that he wasn't even the best quarterback on Washington this year, and Washington's offense just wasn't really that great. There are good things about Washington this season. The offense wasn't one of them. And Haskins is not the future quarterback that he'll be when they drafted him. So simple as that.
It's not like he looked like a good QB when he played. He couldn't make any throws. Dwayne Haskins, it didn't feel like he's a good QB. And his attitude sucked too. We just have to say his attitude also sucked for the first 2 years.
Okay, so next question is, J.J. Watt had a controversial press conference calling out players who didn't try hard enough. Was he right or wrong?
I mean, it's hard to kind of analyze why he's angry. I think it's tough to really explain why. I mean, we know he's angry because they're not playing good football in Houston, but I mean, most guys in the NFL, they put in their effort 100%. So I don't know if he's calling out his teammates. I don't know what's going on inside the locker room, but I mean, it's from the heart. He's right to say, the fans deserve more. They still care no matter what. And nothing he said was wrong. It's just who is it directed at and kind of where is it coming from? We don't really know, but it's definitely interesting to see where he's coming from and truth that came from that.
Look, I respect what J.J. Watt said because, look, we haven't held back when we talked about Texans. The media hasn't held back when we talk about Texans. And I think as a teammate the one player that really is kind of the shining light on that team, I think he has a right to, question his teammates' ability to care about the game they play. I think he has every right. He's the leader on a team. He has every right to push against his team and speaking on the media. Yeah, maybe there would be better ways to do that. Maybe he could kind of do it behind closed doors. But look, I respect for him for being honest with what he thinks for the team.
Okay, who should start for Miami, Tua or Fitzpatrick?
Fitzpatrick. Look, he's been the more consistent QB. Tua definitely has talent. He's young. The potential definitely is there, but you're fighting for a playoff spot, and I don't think Fitzpatrick's done anything to tell you that he's not the guy going forward. He obviously has the respect of the locker room. Miami's defense is great, and I think Fitzpatrick has been more consistent. And look, we can talk about potential all we want. maybe you play Tua and see kind of, if he struggles, then you could put Fitzpatrick. But I just think he'd be more consistent, and I'd give him the nod if you're fighting for your playoff
Time's up.
life.
Look, it's an obvious thing to say, yeah, Tua will be like the future quarterback, and then in the next season, yeah, make him the starter. But I think for now, I agree with you that it's Fitzpatrick because he has been playing better. If they're fighting for playoffs, I think in playoff time we've seen how difficult it is for young quarterbacks to kind of like break out during the playoffs. So I think the safe pick is definitely Fitzpatrick, and I think the smart pick as well is to go with him.
Why can't Tua learn from Fitzpatrick? Let Tua sit behind him and see what goes on. I mean,
Exactly.
look, you can't really go wrong, but I think Fitzpatrick's been more
Time's up.
consistent.
Exactly.
Was the NFL wrong for putting the Browns' top 4 receivers on the COVID-19 list?
Now they just have to be more responsible. Like it's easy for me to say sitting here, I don't really know what's going on within the locker room. Was it tough? Obviously, but at the end of the day, the Ravens suffered it, the Titans suffered it, and at the end of the day, I think the NFL has done a good job of actually completing the season. They didn't have a bubble; they have huge rosters, so we didn't know how it was going to work. But I think the NFL's handled the entire season pretty well, and you don't want to spread COVID. Now you're coming to playoff time. What, you trying to expose other teams to the COVID virus? If you're high risk, you have to sit, and I think the NFL is fair to do that.
Yeah, you literally took the words out of my mouth. Like the Ravens went through this, the 49ers went through this, the Titans went through this. I get the Browns are fighting for a playoff spot, but that's kind of on them for not following protocol better, and they end up on the COVID list. And the NFL isn't going to show favoritism to a team because of the timing of when it happens. If they didn't want it to happen, they should have been more careful. And like you said, the NFL has been doing a good job of managing these things and like taking proper actions when the team breaks protocol, and they just did the same thing here.
Okay. Who is winning the NFC East?
I mean, as a Cowboys fan, it's an easy pick. It depends if even if Alex Smith plays for Washington, we just don't know how healthy he is, how mobile is he going to be? Is he going to be able to throw? I mean, it really depends on Washington. If Washington takes care of their business, they're fine. The Giants-Cowboys could go 50-50. It's a tough game to call. I mean, look, I think just the way the Cowboys are playing, they're just the hottest team. The Giants' defense has kind of fallen off, and their offense stinks. The Cowboys win, all the pressure goes to Washington, and depending on who plays at QB, it's tough to call. But as a Cowboys fan, I guess I have to say Cowboys, but it doesn't matter. First round exit for whoever.
I'd say Washington. I think throughout the season they've looked like no team has been great in that division. I'm going to be clear, but I think they've looked consistently the strongest throughout the games. I think they definitely have the strongest defense, and I think in playoffs that matters. That goes very far because they're going to face good offensive teams, and they're going to need a defense that could support them.
We're not talking about who's going to potentially win a playoff game. None of those teams are going to win a playoff game.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
I think the way the Cowboys are playing, they got a lot of talent on offense. I think the potential is there where
time's up.
They somehow
Washington facing the Eagles. I'm saying
they somehow get in. It depends. Washington, if they take care of business, and they're in.
Time's up. Was Canada wrong for running up the score against Germany?
Now, look, it's a tournament, and I think any athlete, no matter what, you don't take your foot off the gas. I don't think it's disrespectful. I think it's almost a sign of respect for bringing your best. It's not even an issue of the goal difference, because we know goal difference wasn't going to come into play for Canada anyways. But look, they played a great game of hockey, Canada, and I think Germany would only want Canada to bring their best. You saw their frustration, and I think they're frustrated in the way they played. But credit to Canada for playing a great game of hockey.
Yeah, I was also going to say no because I'll say this. I think it's just more disrespectful to take your foot off the gas because, look, everyone's coming to play their best, and I don't think that your opponents deserve any less, no matter what the score is. You go out to make sure you win, and they guarantee to win by scoring 12 goals.
Okay. So will Kirby is it Dash or Dak?
Doc.
Okay. Will Kirby Doc's injury cost Canada the gold?
I mean, possibly, because when you lose a player of that talent and that level of experience, because we have to remember, as a rookie at the Charlotte Blackhawks, he looked like he was a seasoned veteran out there. I mean, losing your best player is never easy, but Canada has the talent to remain in the hunt, to remain as a potential winner of this tournament, but I think it definitely hurts them, and I think it could cost them because Kirby Doc brought a lot to that team.
It definitely hurts them. I wouldn't say it completely cost them because Canada is a really talented team. Canada's the best team in the World Juniors, like every season, because of just how much Canada focuses on developing young hockey players like this. So Do they get hurt from his injury? Yes, of course, because Kirk Doc is a fantastic player and is a key piece to his team. I don't think it completely cost him though, because again, Canada, even well, Kirk Doc is still one of the best teams in the tournament.
Was the Clippers' 51-point loss the most embarrassing defeat in NBA history?
I can't think of another one. Look, if you're a bad team that gets blown out, whatever, you could have an off night as a bad team and lose by 30, 40. We've seen it happen before. But the Clippers, a team that we expected to compete for a championship, losing by 51. I mean, where's the pride? I mean, where's the heart? I saw none of that in that game. And I started tuning in towards the second quarter. I figured I was watching beforehand, but I saw the score. And I'm like, I have to see what's going on. And they looked like they didn't want to be there. And that's inexcusable for an NBA team, especially with the talent level of the Clippers. And quickly, I have to say Ty Lue. We saw in Cleveland, winning that championship with a fluke is all LeBron and Kyrie. Ty Lue will not win a championship with the Clippers. He's a fraud.
Yeah, I mean, before I answer this, I'll say Clippers are definitely they're a better team with Doc Rivers as coach than Tyronn Lue. Doc Rivers is a better coach, hands down. In terms of this, the most embarrassing loss, I think given the context of the Clippers, yes. But I'd say the most embarrassing loss was when Raptors let Kobe Bryant score 81 on them.
Well, that is an individual having a great game.
Yeah, but
the Clippers as a team lost by 51 to the Mavericks. I can't think of a more embarrassing loss. Will Chamberlain scored 101 game.
Okay, yeah, but that's
Devin Booker put up 71. Look, Kobe Bryant's a great player. It happens.
It's a completely different era.
An embarrassing loss. No, I don't think the Raptors. I don't think that's the most embarrassing loss in history because Kobe.
When you let one player score 81 on the modern era, that's an embarrassing loss.
It happens. I disagree. I think losing that game was more embarrassing than. I think the Clippers losing by 51 is more embarrassing. But anyways.
First impressions of KD and Kyrie in Brooklyn.
Yeah, we touched on it a bit. I love it. They look fantastic, and they're playing team ball. It's really all you could ask for from the Brooklyn Nets. And as I said before, they're championship contenders. It's really where I'll leave it with the Brooklyn Nets.
I'll say that they're my favorites to take in the East. That's all. I said last week, and I stick by this week.
Okay.
I've saved some time there for you, Viva, because we went a little long in the last week.
James Harden, what's next?
No, he looks good, though. No matter what, no one could doubt the ability that he could score. I mean, 44 and 17 in a loss. I mean, I think we know why he wants out of Houston. They clearly don't have the talent level to compete with any serious team, even with having, a top player in James Harden. But, yeah, no matter if he goes, I'm assuming he's going to get traded wherever he goes. They're getting a guy that can score a lot of points and quickly.
Yeah, I mean, James Harden, we already know what he's about. We know how talented he is. We know how much he can score. He's one of the best scorers to play in this generation as a pure scorer. But unless it's some big move that puts him to a team that gives him a chance to win a championship, I don't see anything really changing with his story. I just see him continue to be a great scorer. And I honestly don't know really what team will really fit him in. As you said before, all teams have talented players, and the most talented teams right now, I'm not sure which one Harden would be really the best fit to be as productive as he's been and still win a championship.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't get traded now, but he's definitely going to get traded within the next 3 or 4 months. Because a contending team that maybe won't look as good in 3 months, they'll be licking their chops and saying, "There's a guy that could win us a championship."
Time's up. Anyways, on that note, I think that is about it for today. Thank you for listening to 5-5 Sports. We would like to wish you all I'm sorry, I can't read today. I think that's about it for today. Thank you for listening to 5-5 Sports. We would like to wish all of you a happy new year. And if you like what you're listening to, feel free to subscribe and join us next week. Bye, guys.
Take care.